Your soulmate got emotional about your age last night, and what they told their friend was not something they planned to say. It came out because something inside them had become too heavy to keep hidden. There was a conversation that started normally. It may have been late at night, when everything becomes quieter and people stop pretending that they are completely fine. Your soulmate was talking with someone they trust, perhaps a close friend who has seen parts of their life that most people never notice. Then your name, your age, or the difference between your ages somehow became part of the conversation. And suddenly, their entire attitude changed. They became quiet. They stopped joking. They started thinking. The friend expected an ordinary explanation, but instead your soulmate became emotional and admitted something they had been carrying privately. They said, in one form or another, I keep thinking about whether I found them too late, or whether I was simply meant to meet them at this exact point in my life. That sentence reveals something important. They are not looking at your age the way other people might. They are looking at your journey. They are thinking about everything you have survived, everything you have learned, and everything that changed you before they ever became part of your story. And this is where the message becomes deeper. Because your soulmate may have recently realized that your age represents much more than a number. It represents years of becoming. Years of disappointment. Years of waiting. Years of learning who deserves access to your heart. Years when you may have wondered why certain relationships ended, why certain doors closed, and why some people disappeared without explanation. Your soulmate was thinking about all of that. And something about it touched them deeply. They may have told their friend, I wish I had known them earlier. But then they paused. Because another thought entered their mind. Maybe meeting you earlier would not have created the same connection. Maybe you needed to become who you are now. Maybe they needed to become who they are now. Maybe the timing that once looked like delay was actually preparation. That realization can make someone emotional. Because sometimes a person does not cry because they are unhappy about the present. Sometimes they cry because they finally understand the past. Your soulmate may have looked back at their own life and recognized how many wrong turns they took. They may have remembered people they trusted who disappointed them. They may have remembered relationships that looked promising but ended painfully. They may have remembered seasons when they felt completely lost. And then they thought about you. The person who somehow appeared after all those chapters had already happened. That is what surprised their friend. Your soulmate was not simply talking about your age. They were talking about your timing. They were talking about why you came into their life when you did. And perhaps the most emotional part of the conversation happened when their friend asked a simple question. Why does their age bother you so much? Your soulmate may have taken a long breath before answering. And the answer was probably not what the friend expected. They may have said, it doesn't bother me. It makes me think about everything they must have gone through. That changes everything. Because when someone begins to think about your age through the lens of your experiences, they begin seeing you differently. They stop seeing a number. They start seeing a story. They see the younger version of you who had dreams that were not yet fulfilled. They see the version of you who trusted people too easily. They see the version of you who had to become stronger after disappointment. They see the moments when you smiled even though you were hurting. They see the years when you wondered whether life would ever make sense. And somehow, your soulmate feels connected to that story even though they were not physically present for every chapter. That is why their emotions became so strong. Your soulmate may have confessed something else to their friend. I wish I could have protected them from some of what they experienced. Think about that. They were not necessarily saying they could literally change your past. They were expressing emotional regret over a history they were never even part of. That is something people say when they have begun caring deeply. Because when you genuinely care about someone, their past starts to matter. You begin wondering what made them guarded. You begin wondering why they hesitate. You begin wondering why they sometimes disappear emotionally. You begin wondering why they don't trust easily. You begin wondering what happened before you arrived. And your soulmate may finally be asking those questions. There is another layer to this. Your age may have triggered a realization about time itself. Your soulmate may suddenly be thinking, how much time have we wasted? That thought can hit someone unexpectedly. Because perhaps they spent months or years resisting what they felt. Maybe they convinced themselves that the connection was impossible. Maybe they allowed fear to control them. Maybe they listened to other people's opinions. Maybe they worried about circumstances. Maybe they were afraid of the age difference, the timing, the distance, family expectations, or what other people would say. But last night, something shifted. They may have realized that time does not wait for anyone. And suddenly, the thought of losing more time with you became painful. Their friend may have noticed this immediately. They may have said, "You really care about this person, don't you?" And your soulmate could not give an easy answer. Because sometimes silence is the answer. Sometimes a person becomes quiet because saying yes would reveal more than they are ready to admit. Maybe your soulmate looked away. Maybe they changed the subject. Maybe they laughed nervously. But inside, they knew. They care. And they may care much more deeply than they have shown. Now listen carefully, because this is where the prophetic message becomes personal. Do not allow your age to become a reason to question your worth. Do not compare your timeline with someone else's. Do not look at another person's relationship and think you are behind. Do not look at another person's marriage, career, family, success, or love story and decide that your own story has somehow failed. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified because your journey took longer than you expected. There are things in your life that could only have been understood after you experienced certain seasons. The person you are becoming now could not have been created by an easy life. Your maturity came from somewhere. Your discernment came from somewhere. Your ability to recognize what is genuine came from somewhere. And perhaps that is precisely what your soulmate sees. They may not be attracted only to your appearance. They may be drawn to the wisdom that exists behind your eyes. They may sense that you have lived through things that changed you. They may feel that your presence carries a depth they cannot easily explain. That is why the conversation became emotional. Because they realize that your age is connected to a story they want to understand. And there is another revelation. Your soulmate may have told their friend that they are afraid of wasting time. Not because they are certain about every detail of the future, but because they now understand that hesitation has a cost. Every time fear says, wait, time moves forward. Every time insecurity says, you're not ready, another day passes. Every time outside opinions say, this will never work, the heart becomes more confused. But something inside your soulmate may be becoming stronger than those voices. They may be reaching a point where they want clarity. Not fantasy. Not games. Not endless uncertainty. Clarity. They may want to know what is real. They may want to know whether the connection between you has a future. And they may finally be willing to have conversations they previously avoided. This is why their friend may have been surprised. They may have heard your soulmate say something like, I don't want to lose them because I was too afraid to act. That sentence carries weight. Because it means the biggest obstacle may not be another person. It may not be distance. It may not even be circumstances. It may have been fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of commitment. Fear of judgment. Fear of getting hurt. Fear of making the wrong decision. Fear of what would happen if they admitted how deeply they felt. But fear can only remain in control when it remains unnamed. Once someone recognizes their fear, they can begin moving beyond it. And perhaps that is exactly what happened last night. Your soulmate recognized something. They recognized that they have been thinking about you more seriously than they wanted to admit. They recognized that your age made them think about the future. They recognized that time matters. They recognized that your story matters. And they recognized that the connection cannot simply be dismissed. Now, there may be something else coming. A conversation. A message. A confession. A question. A moment when your soulmate finally says something they have been holding inside. Don't force it. Don't chase it. Don't try to manipulate the outcome. Let actions reveal what words cannot. If this connection is genuine, it will not require you to destroy your peace just to keep it alive. You do not need to beg someone to recognize your value. You do not need to prove that you are worthy of love. You do not need to compete with anyone. Your responsibility is to continue becoming the healthiest, strongest, most authentic version of yourself. And if your soulmate is truly moving toward you, they must also grow. They must become honest. They must become courageous. They must take responsibility for their choices. They must learn how to communicate. They must stop allowing fear to make decisions for them. Love is not simply emotion. Love requires action. And perhaps your soulmate is beginning to understand that. Their conversation with their friend may have been the first time they openly admitted what their heart has been trying to tell them. Your age became the doorway. But the real subject was you. Your journey. Your future. And the possibility of sharing more of that future together. There is something beautiful about realizing that two people do not necessarily meet at the beginning of their stories. They meet after life has shaped them. After mistakes. After lessons. After losses. After growth. After seasons that made them question everything. And sometimes the timing feels strange because the people involved are no longer the people they used to be. Maybe years ago, you would not have recognized each other. Maybe years ago, your soulmate would not have been ready. Maybe you would have accepted less than you deserve. Maybe they would have run from something real. Maybe both of you needed time. That does not mean the past was wasted. It means the past prepared you. Your soulmate may now be seeing that. And that realization can be overwhelming. Because suddenly, the question is no longer, why are they this age? The question becomes, why did our paths cross now? That is a much deeper question. And perhaps they do not have the answer yet. Maybe they are still processing it. Maybe they are still afraid. Maybe they are still trying to understand why someone they did not expect has affected them so deeply. But something has changed. They are thinking about you differently. They are thinking beyond the moment. Beyond attraction. Beyond curiosity. Beyond temporary emotions. They are thinking about time. They are thinking about the years ahead. They are thinking about what could happen if they stopped running from what they feel. And their friend may have seen something in their face that your soulmate could not hide. Emotion. Regret. Hope. Fear. And perhaps a strange sense of gratitude. Because even though they may wish they had met you earlier, they may also realize something important. They met you when they were capable of recognizing you. That is different. Sometimes the right person appearing at the wrong time is not the story. Sometimes the person appears at the right time, but you only understand the significance later. So if you have been wondering why this connection has felt unusually significant, take a step back. Do not obsess over every sign. Do not interpret every silence. Do not build your entire future around predictions. Instead, pay attention to character. Pay attention to consistency. Pay attention to whether communication becomes clearer. Pay attention to whether actions begin matching words. Those are the signs that matter. And if your soulmate is truly experiencing this emotional shift, their behavior will eventually reveal it. They may become more open. They may ask deeper questions. They may become curious about your past. They may want to understand your dreams. They may begin talking about the future. They may finally acknowledge things they previously avoided. And when that happens, you will understand why last night's conversation mattered. Because sometimes a private conversation becomes the beginning of a public decision. A person talks to a friend first. They process their emotions. They admit what scares them. They hear themselves say the truth out loud. And once the truth has been spoken, it becomes harder to run from it. That may be where your soulmate is right now. Standing at the edge of honesty. Looking at the years behind them. Looking at the person in front of them. And asking themselves whether they are willing to let fear steal another chapter. If you have been feeling unusually reflective lately, perhaps that is why. Maybe you have been thinking about your own timeline. Maybe you have been wondering whether love is still possible. Maybe you have been asking whether you missed your opportunity. Maybe you have been questioning whether someone could genuinely accept you exactly as you are. Let this message remind you. Your age does not cancel your destiny. Your past does not cancel your future. Your disappointments do not cancel your ability to love. And your waiting season does not mean you were forgotten. You are allowed to arrive at your next chapter slowly. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to have standards. You are allowed to say no to what no longer fits your life. And you are allowed to believe that the future can contain something better than the past. Your soulmate may be realizing the same thing. Perhaps they are looking at you and realizing that your age is not something to fear. It is evidence of everything you have survived. It is evidence of your growth. It is evidence that you have reached this moment with lessons that cannot be taught in a classroom. And maybe, just maybe, that is what touched their heart last night. They weren't emotional because of a number. They were emotional because they finally understood the story behind it. They realized that there is a human being behind that age. A person who has waited. A person who has been hurt. A person who has grown. A person who still has dreams. A person who deserves to be chosen intentionally. And if your soulmate truly wants a place in your future, they will have to meet you with that same intentionality. No more half-truths. No more endless confusion. No more disappearing whenever emotions become uncomfortable. No more allowing everyone else to decide what your connection should mean. At some point, two people have to become honest with themselves. And perhaps your soulmate took their first real step toward that honesty last night. So don't chase the revelation. Let it unfold. Don't force the confession. Let the person who has been hiding speak when they are ready. Don't compromise your standards just because someone is emotional. Let emotional words be followed by meaningful actions. And if the day comes when your soulmate finally tells you what they told their friend, remember this moment. Remember that before the confession came the realization. Before the action came the conversation. Before the decision came the emotion. Something inside them had to change first. And maybe that change began with one simple realization. I don't care about their age. I care about the life they have lived, the person they have become, and the future we might still have. That is the surprise. The age was never really the issue. You were. Your story was. Your timing was. Your presence was. And perhaps your soulmate is finally beginning to understand why meeting you at this particular point in life feels different from anything they experienced before. If this message speaks to you, don't respond from desperation. Respond from peace. Write this in the comments. My timing is not late. My story is still unfolding. Let that be your declaration. Because your future should not be controlled by fear of the clock. It should be built through wisdom, patience, courage, and genuine connection. And if your soulmate is truly part of that future, they will not merely become emotional about your age. They will become intentional about your life. They will respect your journey. They will honor your boundaries. They will communicate honestly. They will show up. They will stop asking whether the timing is perfect and start asking whether they are willing to make the timing meaningful. And that is where this story can change. Last night may have been emotional for your soulmate. But what comes next depends on what they do with what they realized. The conversation may be over. The emotions may have settled. The friend may have gone home. But the question your soulmate is now carrying is still alive. What am I going to do about this? And sometimes that question is the beginning of everything. Stay grounded. Stay open. But never abandon your peace. Because the right connection will not require you to become smaller. It will meet you where you are and grow with you. And perhaps your soulmate is finally realizing that your age isn't something standing between you. It may be one of the reasons they understand the depth of what they feel. They aren't looking at how many years have passed. They are beginning to wonder how many meaningful years could still be ahead. And that thought may be exactly what made them emotional last night. Not the past. Not the number. But the possibility of the future.